is that Mr. Stillwell, he's on trial for that here today. At the time he wrote those lyrics, he had never beaten a homicide.
That's a real slippery slope to explain. I want to say something, if I can get some.
He had never been cleared or went to trial and was found not guilty of a homicide.
Yes.
If you're new, make sure y'all hit that notification bell, that like, share, comment, and subscribe. Grab a seat. We finna dig deep. What's up, YouTube family? Welcome back to the channel. Man, today, the defense finally got their moment to actually cross Vivarito. Now, we definitely got to talk about exactly how this cross went down and exactly what was actually revealed with this actual witness being crossed by the defense. Told y'all it was going to be messy. And it wasn't just because this actual witness was up here for the state, but this witness was actually a threat for the state. Now, even more diabolical, the actual defense actually exposed a whole bunch of actual flaws in the investigation. And again, no reports. Man, y'all make sure y'all subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. Tap that notification bell so you'll get the drop whenever I drop. And definitely hit that like button to help the channel continue to grow. Y'all know the vibe.
Like you said, I made it about the first watch that made it to
made it about the first watch,
yeah.
Which was also a Richard Mille watch, or Mill.
I don't
know how to pronounce it. So you did make it about the first Richard Mille, just not the
that
second
is in
Richard
evidence.
Mille. Okay. But they're both Richard Mille watches, correct?
I mean, there were several much more expensive pieces of jewelry that were there also. And this is not my first case with a lot of expensive jewelry.
Here you go. Did you get it pulled up, Mr. Atkins? Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Let's go back to 512 VV for just a moment.
Okay.
Look at would you read that line below again about running like Ricky?
Yes.
And what is the import of running like Ricky?
It's from a movie.
And what movie is that from?
Boys in the Hood.
And what's happening to Ricky in Boys in the Hood that's running like Ricky has become a meme?
He's getting gunned down in a drive-by shooting.
And what's he doing when he's getting gunned down?
Running.
And he's running down an alley, correct?
Yes.
And he's running at a pretty good clip away from the vehicle that is shooting him with a shotgun, correct?
Correct.
Okay. He's not standing on a sidewalk, right?
I didn't insinuate that.
Sorry?
I didn't insinuate that.
No, I didn't say you did. I'm just
Okay,
asking
yeah,
you a
no.
question.
He's running.
Okay. And he's running directly away from the shotgun that's coming out of a car to shoot him, correct?
Correct.
Okay. This picture here of I guess it's Duke, it's Martinez Arnold, correct?
Yes.
And Diamante Kendrick. This is from June 23rd, 2020, correct?
Correct.
And that is approximately 5 years and 5 months after the killing of Donovan Thomas.
Yes, this picture was more so of importance to me to show the alliance between the Crips and YSL.
Oh, that's right. That's a hybrid gang, right?
Correct.
Okay. And a hybrid gang is kind of like a nose of wax, right? It's something that you can twist and pull so that any type of characteristics that you find can meet the definition of a gang, right?
That's not true.
It isn't true. Why wouldn't that be true?
For example, this hybrid gang with Mr. Arnold, this came about when Mr. Keith Troop died and Mr. Williams gave the eulogy at Mr. Keith Troop's funeral. And if you listen to Mr. Kitchens, he tells the story about how Mr. Williams was put in charge to take care of Mr. Kitchens and guide him. And he's the one that kind of took them under their wing, and it was okay. And Mr. Williams was the first one to cross color lines when it came to gangs here in Georgia. And they were first uneasy with that, but Keith Troop explained to them, no, it's okay, this is something we do now. So that's an example. And the Department of Justice defines hybrid gangs as a gang member's participation in multiple gangs, vague rules and codes of conduct, different gangs collaborating together to commit crimes. And there's several other definitions, but it's not just something I made up. The Department of Justice defines it too.
No, I know. And what I'm trying to understand from you is I've seen multiple gang experts come in here and talk about definitions of gangs and definitions of hybrid gangs. And it just appears that if a group of individuals don't fit your definition of a gang, that they automatically get classified as a hybrid gang. I'm asking a question about hybrid gang.
Well,
can you explain what a hybrid gang is?
yes,
Yeah.
I gave you part of it. It's traditionally a neighborhood gang or local gang that tries to take on the identifiers of a traditional gang. Like, I'm from New York. The gangs in New York are much more structured. The gangs in LA, Chicago are much more structured. I apologize, from New York. Um, the gangs are much more structured here in Georgia. You'll see there are neighborhood cliques that will adopt the identifiers, like YSL, for example, adopted the identifiers of sex, money, murder. They were sex, money, murder based in the beginning, but then Mr. Williams decided to do his own spin on it. Like I said, when he was very close to Keith Troop, when he was deceased, he kind of, or prior to that, like I said, if you watch, there's history about it where Mr. Kitchens talks about he was sent to go help out Mr. Williams at one point. And at first he was uneasy, like, oh, do we do this? And he said,
Slow down also.
Yeah,
It's
just-
sustained
yeah.
to hearsay.
and that's,
I'm trying to understand, without giving examples, if you can define hybrid gang.
it is a neighborhood gang that takes on pieces of traditional gangs. And like I said, you'll have individuals from different gangs working together. You will have the mixed use of identifiers, like we've seen through the presentation of evidence here. Like here, this snake and the blue heart for the Crips. Vague rules and code of conduct. Sex, money, murder, bloods have a rank structure. I don't know a rank structure within YSL. So they take pieces of what they like and they put their own spin on it, but are still backed by a traditional gang.
So a traditional gang would have a hierarchy, correct?
Correct.
So let's dig. What's interesting is this actual witness choice of word. Now, as you see, she's clearly biased and she's coming from a biased standpoint. Now, it's even more interesting that you actually sit up and listen, how she actually selects and she picks her words when she answers the questions that a man asks by the defense. Does she actually give a yes or no answer? Or does she beat around the fence? Now, even deeper, she actually also just said that YSL doesn't even have an actual hierarchy. Let that sink in. Let's dig.
Rank structure within YSL. So they take pieces of what they like and they put their own spin on it, but are still backed by a traditional gang.
So a traditional gang would have a hierarchy, correct?
Correct.
But you, according to I believe the testimony we've heard, YSL as a gang doesn't have a hierarchy.
They don't have, but the Goodfellows, for example, they have,
I'm asking, let's go back to my question.
Right,
YSL.
right.
Then I will ask the counsel to be able to explain her answer. I mean, the witness to be able to explain her answer.
Well, the answer wasn't responsive to my question.
Overruled. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay.
Okay. YSL does not have a hierarchy as a traditional gang does, correct?
They don't have a set of leadership like roles, no.
Okay, so in that sense, they wouldn't fit into the definition of a traditional gang.
But they're still welcomed by members of the Sex, Money, Murder, Bloods.
Can you just answer my question?
Yes.
Okay. So my question was, they don't fit into the definition of a traditional gang.
Correct.
So instead, they get slotted over to this catch-all category of hybrid gang, correct?
I wouldn't call it a catch-all, no.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Just like he said, a catch-all category. Is that not what they did? They weren't able to definitively identify who was who and who banged with what, whether you were blood or Crip. So what do? Throw out a big net and put all of them together and see what you can get. Does it not sound like what they did with the RICO? A big umbrella of actual compiled charges from individuals that committed their own alleged crimes? Let that sink in. Let's dig.
You were asked by Ms. Hilton, how did you notate your work on this case? And then you said that you talked about your search warrant affidavits, that you make them thorough.
Correct.
Okay, but search warrant affidavits aren't memorandums, are they?
No.
Okay, they're not police reports, are they?
No.
Okay. And your explanation, you don't have reports written for the work that you did in this case as a district attorney, with the district attorney's office, do you?
I have, I think, one or two that were witness memorandums, but other than that, no.
Reports about when you were collecting social media posts?
No.
Got any reports on that?
No.
Okay, about whose addresses you were looking at and whose you weren't? Do you have any reports on that?
What do you mean by addresses?
Instagram addresses or Instagram, which people that you were following on Instagram, which people you were looking at their Instagram, what dates you were looking at their Instagram. Do you have reports about that?
No, but they were compiled and each date that they were looked at were noted on the photo.
Okay, so we're just supposed to look at the stuff that you compile and bring to court, and that's good enough to let us fill in all the work that you did.
Objection, argument.
Just take your word for it?
It's cross, I'm going to permit it.
I mean, I'm here to explain it.
Okay, well, that's fine, but
Right.
what if we want reports? Do you have
I
reports?
said the DA, now I work at a different facility. When I worked at the GBI, we had a reporting system. The DA's office doesn't have that. So I would, in my affidavits, make them as lengthy. When you see an affidavit of mine, it's pretty lengthy for a reason.
Okay, well, I didn't ask about your search warrant affidavits. I'm asking about reports and memorandums right now. Okay, and you seem to be saying, well, there was no record-keeping software with the district attorney's office that you could memorialize the work you did.
Correct.
Okay, they don't have a typewriter, they don't have computers, they don't have Microsoft Word, they don't have a pad of paper, they don't have pens, they don't have pencils. Is that what you're saying?
They do.
Okay. But you just didn't write any reports about any of this work that you've been testifying over the last 3 days that you did.
I don't really know anybody that would write a report saying, on this date, I screenshotted this picture. On this date, I screenshotted this picture. That's not really a report. That's not an event I would write a report for.
Well, what if I want to know exactly what Instagram addresses, what individuals that you looked at on Instagram and which ones you didn't, which ones you checked out what they were posting and which ones you didn't? How would I know if you don't write a report?
Well, if I looked at them, the name would be on the post. And if I didn't, there wouldn't be a picture.
Okay, so again, we're just going with what you say happened years later based on the evidence that you bring into court.
I compiled my findings into a folder and provided it as part of the case file.
Okay. And you didn't write any reports about the work that you were doing in real time, did you?
There's a report for Waters Road, and the rest of the investigation, like the investigation into the stabbing of Mr. Bennett, can be found in pretty lengthy affidavits.
So you wrote a report for Waters Road?
I did.
Were you at the DA's office at that time?
I wrote it on a piece of paper. It was a Word document.
So you were able to make a Word document about that work, just not the other work that you did, like when you were reviewing my client's phone, like when you were collecting things off of social media, like when you were reviewing surveillance videos. You couldn't write reports for those matters.
Today, with a report management system, I wouldn't write a report for screenshotting social media or reviewing a phone. I traditionally put together a PowerPoint or a visual presentation for trial.
Okay, I didn't ask what you traditionally do. I asked what you did do and didn't do.
But that's what I would do that's what I did back at the DA's office, is what I'm telling you. I would do that today with a report management system, as I did without one. Those things are not responding to Waters Road. I wanted to make sure it's better suited to put in an affidavit because it's memorialized in the clerk's office. Systems can get hacked, hard drives can get lost, things can get deleted, files can get lost. So I prefer to anything that's noteworthy, make sure it's memorialized somewhere.
Things can get lost. That's your explanation? You can't lose something if you don't make it, can you?
Which is why anything regarding my investigation is probably in an affidavit that I've wrote hundreds of pages.
Probably in an affidavit?
If you would give me a case that you're specifically referring to, I can give you an example.
In your affidavits, I would like you to show me an affidavit for a search warrant where you list all the Instagram addresses and people that you checked out in March 2022 when you were pulling their posts. I want to know everyone that you searched.
That was served to you in a discovery folder.
Okay. I have the posts.
Correct. So that's all of them.
All right. I'm not asking for the posts. I'm asking for a list of the people that you searched for.
If you look in the folder, you will see the list of people I searched for.
Okay. All right.
Now, I'm not sure if it's just me, but in my personal opinion, it seems like when it comes to this actual case between YFN and YSL, that this actual witness has actually picked a side. Now, it's clear that she's not here for any of the defendants that were on trial, a young thug, but what is also clear is that when it comes to picking a side, YFN is the side that's getting the love. Let's dig.
That artists often talk about their bankroll and how big it is.
Sometimes, yes.
Is that always true, that the artists that are bragging about their bankroll is really as big as they're claiming it is in their songs?
That's an individual basis.
Okay. Could it be, you ever heard the term, like my son says it all the time, cap? Like, just made up. Cap.
It could be, but that's not necessarily the case with Mr. Stillwell Jackson.
I'm asking if you've ever heard the
Yes,
term.
I have.
Okay. And artists cap on songs all the time, don't they?
Some do, some
Okay.
don't.
And Mr. Stillwell, in his songs, was claiming that he had a bankroll.
And he did. Yes, he did. Sometimes.
Well, on the phones, you reviewed his phones.
Correct.
You saw him basically begging Miss Alexander to give him $1,500.
But if you listen to the March 16th wiretap call, he talks about all the money he had.
Okay.
And he didn't want to go to jail with all that money. So he had a lot of money. It fluctuates from day to day. So I don't know. Some days he has a bankroll. Some days he has no roll. So
Okay. Did he have a bankroll? Do you know if he had a bankroll the day he recorded that song?
do not.
Okay. Could that have been cap?
Could have been. He could have been reminiscing about when he had his bankroll.
Okay. In these songs, while we're talking about Cap, let's see. Mr. Stillwell referred to himself as Big Slime.
Yes.
Okay, you ever hear anyone else refer to Mr. Stillwell as Big Slime?
I'm trying to think. He's been referred to as Big Slime and Life-Size Lizard.
Right, that's what he calls himself.
He's also referred to as that. I've heard him.
So he was claiming to be Big Slime in the
Correct.
song that he wrote or performed. Okay. Then we got, let's see, Dolly White in one of the songs. Bullshit, right?
Dolly, yes.
She brags about making 201K in a day.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know? Is there any evidence that you have that on that day that Dolly White was claiming that she made 201K that day, that she actually made $201,000 that day?
I wouldn't know what day it is to be able to tell you. She could have been on Instagram or somewhere bragging about having 200K. So without knowing the day, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Do you have any evidence that Dolly White, I'm not talking about Jeffrey Williams, I'm talking about Dolly White, has ever made $201,000 in a day in her life?
I couldn't tell you what Miss Greer makes.
Could that have been Cap?
It could, but it also could not have been.
So, we talked about the lyrics on Direct. In these songs, Mr. Stillwell never mentioned an infinity.
No.
Never mentioned Diamante Kendrick.
No.
Never mentioned Demise McMullen or Nard.
No.
Never mentioned Justin Cobb or Doo-Wop.
No.
He mentioned being arrested for a homicide and beating it.
I don't want to, I'm going to tread lightly on it. I don't know. Can I get some direction on how
He said I beat
Okay, but I just want
murder
to
rap.
make sure I'm approaching correctly. You don't want to...
Yeah, I'll ask a very targeted question.
Okay.
He mentioned on Slat Talk, I beat a murder rap.
Yes, he did.
Paid my lawyer $30 for that.
He did mention that.
Okay. He also mentioned beating a homicide on another song, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have, the fact is that Mr. Stillwell, he's on trial for that here today. At the time he wrote those lyrics, he had never beaten a homicide.
So, Mr. Shart asked you a very specific question, and you seem to have answered in a way that surprises everybody. So, we need to get some clarity from you. Okay, so can you listen really carefully to what his question is and answer that question? And then if your answer is still the same, we need to ask some follow-up of you. Okay, go ahead.
In the songs that we reviewed, Mr. Stillwell claimed to have beat a homicide, correct? Or beat a
Correct.
murder rap, beat a homicide.
Correct.
Okay. Did he in fact beat a murder rap or beat a homicide, as he claimed?
I think he...
Go ahead and explain it now, because the jury's not in here.
Yeah,
We're just
yeah.
trying to sort out what
I think
his-
from my understanding of Mr. Stillwell back in that time, he was under the impression that the Donovan Thomas case had been, that they were going to beat it, like they were about to beat it or was beat, or it wasn't going to be an issue. I didn't want to say that because I didn't know.
Well, that's good that you didn't
Yes.
say that, but that's not the question that he asked
I'm
at
not
the
asking
time.
what Mr. Stillwell thought. I'm
Okay,
asking-
yeah, then no.
And listen
Okay.
very carefully to what he actually, that's not what he asked a minute ago, but you don't have like knowledge that nobody else has that he was tried for some
Oh,
other
no.
murder and got a hung jury or an acquittal, right?
No, Your Honor. I just
Okay,
wanted to make sure.
so if Mr. Shart asks you, has he ever beaten one, and by beaten, I mean, gotten an acquittal or however he phrases it, what would your answer be then?
No, I just didn't know the specific outcome of if it was.
Has he
Dismissed
even
and
been
removed.
tried for
No.
another murder?
He
Okay,
has
so
not been
don't
tried.
say, I don't know this.
Now, when I said that this actual witness was an actual problem for the defense and the state, does it make sense now? Now, even more interesting, what did she just do? She just painted a picture on the jury's mind. Now, is this witness actually a witness, or is she actually the acting prosecutor? In my opinion, that was actually deliberately done and definitely a blow to the defense, especially when it comes to them beating this narrative coming from the state. Let's dig.
Understand?
I just thought, I didn't know if he meant it was dropped. That was all, Your Honor.
That's not what was asked.
But that's not what he just asked right here, Your Honor. And
I know that. I know that.
I think that's the clarity that needs to be had, because at the time, Mr. Stillwell was on bond for the murder. And so
That is not anywhere near what he asked. He asked, has he ever been tried for and acquitted of murder? Being given a bond before a trial ever occurs does not a yes answer for, has he ever been tried and acquitted?
right, but even the question he just asked right now was not that direct.
I know, that's because, I know, but just now what he asked, we're just trying to figure out what it is she might mean. And are you then gonna ask?
I'll ask about the bond next.
Okay. So if he asked about bond, then you can answer whatever you know about whether he was released on bond.
I can respect his rights, Your Honor, that's all.
Okay, is anybody need any more clarity on,
I definitely do, because I think on redirect,
Okay.
it becomes very relevant to ask the witness, at the time he wrote those songs, is it, based on everything that you know and speaking to him and other people, that did he believe he beat the murder?
I would not let you ask that, because how on earth can she know what is in his head? I mean, you could ask it, but I would overrule it if objection were made.
I understand, Your
And
Honor.
you point that, if that is in evidence, then you point that out in closing argument.
I think we will put them in now.
Well, y'all have to make a decision.
Yeah. Okay, Investigator Viverito, I'm going to go back to where we were before. In those songs, in Slat Talk,
Correct?
Mr. Stillwell says, I just beat a murder rap, paid my lawyer $30 for that.
Correct?
Okay, and in other songs, he says, I beat a homicide.
Mhm.
Okay. My first question. To your knowledge, in this case, I'm talking about Donovan Thomas,
Correct?
had Mr. Stillwell ever been acquitted or the case been dismissed?
No.
Okay. The case was still open, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So he had not, in fact, beat a homicide.
Correct?
He had not, in fact, beat a murder rap.
Correct?
Yet he claimed that on his songs.
Correct?
Also, he claimed to pay his lawyer $30 for that. Do you know if he actually paid a lawyer anything?
I don't believe he's the one that paid the lawyer, but a lawyer was paid.
Do you know a lawyer's been paid?
At some
What
point.
lawyer?
He was represented at some point.
Well, what lawyer?
I don't know which lawyer he was represented at
Well,
some
you just
point.
said you know the lawyer's been paid, and now I'm asking you what lawyer?
Okay. A lawyer back then would have been paid for him. I don't know.
What's the lawyer's name? Since you had an opinion on it,
You-
that lawyer had been paid, what is that lawyer's name?
All I said was, Mr. Shart, if he had a lawyer, they would have had to have been paid somehow. I don't know how or who.
Okay, so you don't know how much anyone.
I did not work on the Donovan Thomas case at all.
Okay, but you just gave an opinion on it, and so you don't know how much, who, or how much anyone had been paid.
I just said I don't know who his lawyer was or how much or how they were paid.
The reality is, Mr. Stillwell was released on bond.
Yes.
He didn't beat a murder rap. He had been released on bond.
Yes.
Okay, so claim I beat a murder rap. That was cap.
If you want to call it cap. I would say incorrect, but sure.
Claim that he paid a lawyer $30 for that. We don't know. We don't even know who the lawyer is.
Correct?
Okay. He also said in Lizard Walk, bond was $500,000 N-word. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Mr. Stillwell's bond in the case that he paid for Donovan Thomas? Do you know it to have been $500,000?
Believe it was almost not $500,000, but it was a very high amount.
Okay. Was it $500,000?
I think if I remember correctly, it was 300,000.
Was it $500,000?
It was not.
Okay, so that was incorrect. That was cap as well, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Stillwell, since October 2015, has been charged with the Donovan Thomas murder, correct?
I'm not sure the exact date he was charged, but
Late 2015?
sure.
Okay. And in these songs, he openly talks about being charged for that murder, correct?
Yes.
Okay. and he talks about the money he paid lawyers.
Sure,
He talks about the money, the extravagant amounts of money that he paid for bond, $500,000.
sure.
Okay. I'm not saying you like it. I'm not saying I'm like it. Do you deny that potentially an artist, an aspiring artist, being charged in a high-profile case, beating a high-profile case, paying large amounts of bond, would be something that would be appealing in the world of drill music? Do you deny that?
No, engaging in violence and homicide skyrockets you to the top of the corporate ladder in drill music.
Okay.
So let's dig. Now this witness, in my personal opinion, is definitely about to be a major problem when it comes to this case, and not just for the defense, but also for the state. Now the defense definitely has to pay attention to how they ask this witness questions, just for the simple fact she doesn't answer yes or no. She always has an actual follow-up answer that actually leads to her exposing prejudicial information about YSL, or specifically SB. So ask yourself, is it possible that this witness actually picked a side in the beef? And then again, who's actually helping when it comes to that paperwork, the YFN, and the RICO when it comes to Lucci's conspiracy? Let that sink in. And I also thought that it was illegal for anybody involved in the trial to actually sit outside and watch. But ask yourself this, is it not ironic that the same person that we're talking about watch is allegedly in possession of the watch? Man, y'all jump in the comments and let me know y'all's thoughts. Will the defense be able to expose another state's witness, and will these last two defendants walk? Will this actual witness actually be a threat for the defense or a threat for the state? Man, as always, remember, the greater the height, the greater the weight. Until next time, remember, the life you save might be your very own. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Man, y'all tap that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed, and definitely tap that notification bell and turn the notifications on. Until next time, gone.